if Obama and Congress had given a stimulus of the scale that people like myself said was necessary, and that had failed, then we could have a discussion. But in fact, they did something inadequate, and the results are disappointing.
But when you look around, you don't see federal dollars at work. Is that a reasonable criticism? I mean, people compare it to the 30s, and they say, where did all the stimulus money go? We don't see the WPA-type projects. We don't see massive new infrastructure. We spent, you know, at the end of the day, it's still a large number. I know you would have preferred 1.2, 1.3 trillion, but $800 billion is a lot of money. And where did it go? Why did it not have an effect?
Well, first of all, a third of it was tax cuts, which we didn't think was going to be very, in principle, was not going to be very effective because they would be largely saved. A lot of the rest was aid to state and local governments, which helped avoid job cuts, helped make the job cuts at that level less than they would have been, but that's not visible. It's something that didn't happen. Unemployment benefits, again, it's invisible, although it's made a huge difference to a lot of people, and the fact that they're running out is going to be a huge problem. And they did not do enough. There was not a whole lot of stimulus of actual infrastructure. Some of that is coming online now, finally. But I would have been for an all-out push to get a lot of public works spending up front. And in a way, that's saying, we can still do that. If we had the political will, we could do that now.
When you look at Europe, you think that you think the British government is doing exactly the wrong thing, because they're going down this path of austerity, cutting spending, raising taxes. But what they say, I think, is, look, we don't know when this wheel will turn. We are in a situation where our borrowing costs could go up so dramatically that it makes it impossible for us to do anything.
I have been thinking about this in terms of there are two imaginary creatures who are dominating the discussion. There's the invisible bond vigilante and the invisible austerity fairy. Or the confidence fairy, I guess I would call them. The invisible bond vigilante is the hypothetical investor who, any day now, is going to turn on you and drive up your borrowing costs if you don't cancel all notions of stimulus and so on. And everybody points to Greece, but Greece is a very special situation. Look at Germany or the United States or Britain, and the bond vigilantes are invisible. In other words, they can borrow quite cheaply. That's right. U.S. interest rates have actually been dropping. The 10-year bond rate in the U.S. has fallen from 3.9 a few months ago to 2.9 now. And one of the things you notice is that in press reporting, every little uptick of interest rates is reported as, the markets have lost confidence, and then, well, it's like those Victorian photographs of fairies that weren't really there. The fact of the matter is there's no sign of this happening, and it actually shouldn't be happening because, for the reasons we talked about a few minutes ago, what you spend on stimulus right now has almost no bearing on your long-run fiscal prospects. But
just stay with that for a second, because Greece didn't have trouble 9 months ago.
Right.
In other words, are people not right in worrying about what economists call tail risk? That is the small probability of a high-impact event. Isn't that what the financial crisis taught us? That when things are out of whack, you don't know when the things will turn, but they can turn pretty fast.
But why should they turn on the basis of spending that has almost no bearing on your long-run prospects? I would say even in the case of Greece, what mattered was not the spending they did in 2009. What mattered was the realization that the long-run Greek budget position is basically unsustainable. What we do, failing to pass unemployment benefits for the United States now, is not going to rescue us if the markets believe that we are not going to do the big things on Medicare and revenue that are going to be necessary for the long run. So it's fine to believe that something terrible could happen, but it's a pure imputation of motives for which there's no evidence to believe that spending on the economy right now is going to make the difference.
Well, I was talking to a businessman, and I was trying to put forward, the Krugman view, and he said, which, in some ways he thinks is also the administration view, and he said, look, the problem here is that what these guys are trying to do, the Keynesians, the people who want to spend more money, is they're trying to reflate the economy and pump it back up to where it was in 2005, 2006, 2007. But that was all unsustainable. You're sort of trying to stop these mortgages from being foreclosed, but people had bought houses they couldn't pay for. You're trying to somehow get people borrowing again, but they were borrowing too much. Why are you trying to, you know, sort of pump back up an unsustainable situation? These, you know, these people, these companies should be coming back down to more manageable levels of debt, and that's going to take a while.
But why should lots of perfectly good productive capacity and millions of perfectly productive workers who have things to do that we all need be left unemployed while we do that adjustment? I certainly believe we're not going to restore. Housing prices are not going back to where they were. We're not going to. Some of those ghost developments, both of office buildings and of houses, are going to be abandoned. They're never going to be used. But why should we have mass unemployment of school teachers, of automotive workers, of all these parts of the economy that had nothing to do with the bubble, but are now caught up in the tailspin as the economy suffers the aftermath of the bubble? Why should those people be left unemployed?
You realize that there is right now very little political prospect of your recommendations being enacted.
I don't expect to win this debate on policy this month, but I'm hoping that over the course of a year or two that we can hope to at least make policy less awful than it would otherwise be.
Make policy less awful than it would be. That's a ringing cry to the battlements.
Well, hey, I'm an economist, right? They don't call it the dismal science for nothing. But no, I mean, this is, and also I think there's a question you just have to let's get the story of what has just happened right. What we just had was a kind of hysteria among the policy elite, in which based on really no evidence, based on arguments that don't hang together as soon as you do even a bit of the arithmetic, we've had this rush for the exits on helping economies in need. And we need to know that. We need to understand that what happened was not a judicious response, and certainly not something that was forced on us by the real economic environment, but instead a bad decision.
Paul Krugman, pleasure to have you on.
Good to be on.
And we will be right back.